And so I believe in standards. I believe there is an absolute. I believe God is the absolute authority on what we should be gender-wise, whether it's men or women. And so based on God's definition of what a man looks like, it's a man that looks like him. And we know that that is a continuous process that we develop into this man that looks like God, that has God's attributes. So my excitement comes from finding that guy who was broken, or being introduced to a guy who's broken, and help him in the process of becoming a godlike kind of man with godlike qualities. And I think that's the journey that we have to begin with in order to heal our sons that find themselves broken. And so it's been exciting to spend these Mondays, every Monday, with men who have begun to embrace or admit the fact that they're broken. And then to begin the process of discovering what it's like to be healed. So there are two things that I look at when I see a man recovering from his brokenness. You can either be healed or made whole. And I get that from when the 10 lepers were introduced to Jesus, and Jesus spoke a word over them and they were healed. And the Bible says, and they left away healed. But then one came back to give thanks. And Christ asked, where are the other 9? And of course, he said, they have gone their way. He says, I've come back to give you thanks for what you've done for me. And the Lord said to him, go your way, for you have been made whole. Well, the other 9 left healed, he left whole. And what does that look like? So I believe that we are 3-part beings, body, soul, and spirit. And though the others left away healed physically, maybe they were still ill in their soul and in their spirit, but this guy walked away holistically whole. And so my responsibility to these men is how to get them on the pathway to being holistically whole, both body, soul, and spirit. So it's an exciting journey. I believe that in order to get our sons whole, we got to first begin with the fathers and get them made whole. And in turn, they can speak to their sons. And no, that's another process in and of itself. So these last 15 years, I've been on the quest of helping men who are broken become whole. And it's not just me, it's a group of guys that we meet. Like I said, we meet every Monday and we have a discussion about where we are as broken men and what does the word say about our healing process. I think that the complete healing of any man first begins in his heart. And that looks different for each one of us. So that's basically what I do. That's basically where I am. I was a man who was once broken, and God has done a miraculous work in my life based on my journey. And my journey has been, in particular, difficult for me because of my level of brokenness. But God has done an amazing work in my life. And so I can speak from first person, of what God can do with a willing vessel that's willing to do the work. We said this the other night. When it comes to the word of God, we have to let the word of God do the work and do the work of the word of God. So it is like a twofold sword. It works on us while we work it. And if we both work in concert with one another, then I can be made whole. So it's been an exciting journey. And again, I believe that we see the violence of most of these young boys in their lives because there's no man in their life. I'm not going to say that's 100% of the case, but in most cases, most of these young fellows don't have fathers in their lives to the degree that they are in their life. They may be in the peripheral, but they're not in their life, speaking life to them because they themselves as fathers are broken. So for me, and again, my point of view is that we have to begin with the fathers and make them whole because they too are broken through the system, through experiences, through their own decision-making. I think there's a cycle that we find ourselves repeatedly in if we don't learn how to get off that wheel. And if we don't get off the wheel, it's hard to recover from the brokenness that we find ourselves, thus the reason we're on the wheel. So that's what I do. I spend a lot of time with the guys doing this, and it's a cross section of the culture. It's white guys, Hispanic guys, black guys, young guys, old guys, rich guys, broke guys, homeless guys, guys with a big house. So it doesn't matter the demographic or the financial stability that one has. We all at some points have been broken are broken or will be broken. And you have to have a place to go to be able to find some place of healing and refuge. So I don't know how that is, Oliver, but that's basically what I'm doing, what we're doing. Again, I can say honestly, I know what it's like to be broken. I do. I was molested by my dad's brother from the age of 8 to about 11. Didn't never tell my parents. One of my siblings told my dad. My mom was deceased at the time. And so I know what it's like to have an identity crisis based on somebody else's sin encroaching on your life and changing the trajectory of your life. And you having to deal with the weight of that sin. And then you have an identity crisis, which leads you now to find other vehicles by which you gain your identity, whether it's through sex, drugs, or anything that gives you a sense of worth. So I've been on that journey. I've been on the journey where you don't feel like you are able to do anything because you don't even know who you are, which leads to these crazy behavior patterns that you find yourself repeatedly on. So I know what it's like to be broken in that standpoint. I know what it's like to be, to feel like you don't have any worth, that you don't have any say in any matter. But then again, I know what it's like to be made whole too. When God tells you he has made you in his image and after his likeness, and you begin to believe on that and you begin to respond to that in a very positive way. And then you find yourself in college, and God excels you through college and gives you the opportunity to go to school free on somebody else's dime when you didn't think you were ever going to be able to go to college, but God sends you on somebody else's dime who sees a worth in you. And then you find yourself in life, and things happen, of course, and but God has been faithful to me. So I know what it's like to be broken. I know what it's like to be in the process of being made whole, and I know what it's like to be whole. So I think I can speak to a lot of guys in a lot of places because I know what it's like. But again, it takes that level of intimacy, transparency, vulnerability, and confidence in order to make another broken man whole. Because if he feels like if you can't relate, you can't talk to him. So the relatability to the brokenness of any man, and it gives you the access to his heart when you can relate to his brokenness. So I believe to help stop some of this violence, for me, God has given me the opportunity to speak to a lot of men. Again, from every demographic you can think about, from politicians to guys who don't even vote, from prisoners to guys who need to be in prison, but they're not in prison. So, it's just a great space to be in. And fortunately, we were meeting in person, but during COVID, we went on Zoom and we ended up international. So now we're across almost all 50 states and in Canada, every Monday night meeting with men. So that's my story, and I'm gonna stick to it because I believe it to be factual, but I know God to be true. Any questions? Any comments?
First, I want to thank you for your concise and short, but concise synopsis of what you're doing. Every word to me that proceeded out of your mouth had some really deep meaning, and I know it contributed to, one category, if you will, of why people might be resorting to violent behavior. And something you said, of course, you said a broken father cannot, help a broken son, and unless he has dealt with his brokenness and then becomes a platform to help the son say, no, this is not the way to go. Mm-hmm. However, one of the things that you said that resonated with me, a father has the power to speak life into his children, speak life into his son. So I really appreciate that, what you just shared, because that really says a lot. It speaks volumes. And how many of those of all demographics, that are, victims, if you will, that has perpetuated or them into a trajectory of violence or ill behaviors that eventually morphs into violence. So really, really want to thank you for those words. I see Wayne Hankins, his hand's up. You like to ask a question, Wayne?
Yes, I would. I appreciate your comments, Pastor Burke. In the process of working with men that you call broken, how do you deal with the sense of worthlessness? The sense of I really am not important, to men who their whole life through a variety of ways have been told you're no good, you're not smart enough, you're not quick enough, you're not good enough, to go from worthlessness to a sense of real value and keep it. How do you deal with that?
Thank you so much, Wayne. It's good to see you and good to meet you. One of the things that I've had to do, Wayne, and I found it to be very beneficial, is to allow them to speak that and allow them to be clear and know that I've heard them, not to dismiss what they said, not to reduce what they said to just nothing. And then to say, I get it. I really understand how you feel because I've been through the process, and then really begin to talk about your own brokenness. Because I am secure in who I am now, but I can also speak about my brokenness. And people have a tendency to believe somebody who can identify with them through honesty and transparency. It's hard for you to believe me. It's hard for me to believe you if you can't admit that you've been where I am. And so you validate what they're saying by saying, look, I get it. I get it. I understand exactly what you're saying. And let me share some of my truth with you. And then you share the facts of your life. And then you say, but there was a moment in my life that I chose to do something different. To Oliver's point is that the power of life is in the tongue as much as the power of death. So you begin to teach them how to speak life over themselves. Though it was a fact that you felt this way, the truth of the matter is this. This is what God says about you. God says he's created you in his image and after his likeness. And you can become this man that he's called you to be, but you've got to make some hard decisions and you start doing life with people. I tell people this all the time. I choose to do life with you in your mess and in your miracle. So when we partner with them in life and begin to walk that out with them, you become believable. Too often we hear them and then we speak to them and then we dismiss them. And now they're off back to their own space because we have only heard them, but not chosen to do life with them. As messy as it gets, as miraculous as it becomes, we have to do life with them regardless. And so I just spend time with them. I'm transparent. I hear them. To me, the most important thing of any conversation is listening. If you ever want to tell somebody what they need to know, you have to first listen to what they're saying. Because too often we answer a question that they never asked. And what we need to learn to do is answer the question that they asked. And the only way we can do that is to listen to them. I say this all the time. The answer is in the question, not the assumption.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Thank you, Wayne, for the great question. And it's true.
I'll make a comment.
Anyone else?
Reverend Alder.
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. And, I think we're realizing more and more how powerful the position the father is in the family. And it's not been really known for a long time. Although I do have a book that's clear back in 1996. It's called The Heart of a Father, How Dads Can Shape the Destiny of America by Ken Canfield. It's a wonderful book, but it's got kind of exercise things in it, looking at your relation with your dad. Even if your dad passed away, they work through some kind of therapy and with their fathers, So there's a lot of good literature out there, but man, it's such a powerful position a dad has. And even dads who were there and kept a married relationship, but didn't listen, the sons still struggle in some ways, right? Because the dad never listened to their heart, what they wanted to do in their life. And so there was a separation. So sometimes dads are there, but not really listening enough to really help their sons grow. So it's often broken sons anyway, even if you have a dad there. But without a dad, I agree, it's just really tough for a man to learn how to become a man. So I wish we could just multiply you by a few 100,000 times and we could do something more in society, because we really need so much support. Even young men, they look at males in school, have a hard time sitting still. The male is more, rambunctious, more needs space and to move about. So they're trying to find education that fits this kind of nature, very different than females don't mind sitting and being quiet and wanting to, make the teacher happy. But boys don't do that so well. So it really is, even back growing up, even elementary school and high school, it's tough to really feel comfortable within your own skin in some of the situations. So a lot of changes need to be made. And really, it's a big task, but so vital to have dads really learn the power that they have over their children. Yeah.
Can I say something to that, Oliver, if you don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think in the Western culture, the value of fatherhood isn't as significant as mothering is. You know what I mean? It's like we place more emphasis on being a mother than we do on being a father until the child is in trouble. Then we want to know where the father is. Up until that point, he's kind of like insignificant. The mother plays a pivotal role in the success of a child based on the way the culture is structured. And we can almost dismiss a dad until there is a problem with the child, and we want to know, where's the father at? So I think we have to redefine or just give a different value system to fatherhood before the child finds himself in a very violent place or in a place of trouble. If you look at the culture every day, there's a lot of emphasis placed on being a mother, the value. And we see that on Mother's Day when there's billions of dollars spent and celebrating mothers. But on Father's Day, there's probably a third of that being spent on fathers.
Sure.
I think because, again, it's the value system that we place on being a father versus being a mother. Mothers are always celebrated. We always tell our sons to respect your mom, to honor your mom. But that same sort of sentiment isn't placed when it comes to the father. We don't have that same sentiment or that same degree of value placed on the father until that son or that daughter is in a wayward situation. So,
right. Well, you're probably aware that there's studies that show that even young men who become gay often cite the father having no affection with them, right? There's a very important component of physical touch between dads and sons that keep them in more of a masculine feeling, But if they have no dad to give them, affectionate feeling, and just, women in the family, sisters or mom giving feminine, then that's part of becoming gay. It's just one of the components of tendency to become gay. So it also impacts, choosing whether you're heterosexual or homosexual.
well, again, I think we have to identify. So when we identify ourselves as godlike, as men, we tend to think that men don't cry, right? But if I understand the godlike man in me, I can cry. If I understand the godlike man in me, I can have emotions because God had emotions. And I think when we don't understand that part of the godlike part of us, that we tell our sons, don't cry. Men don't cry. Men don't show emotions. But when we embrace the fullness of who God is, we can cry, we can have emotions, we can express ourselves. We do have intuition. It's just different than the women's intuition. We do have feelings. It's just different than the way a woman feels. We do have expressions. It's just we don't express like that. So we kind of dismiss what he feels and what he says, and we embrace what she says and what she feels. And they both are distinguishable in the sense that men do this and women do this, but they both have the same value when it comes to our children.
Amen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. That's really so true. Dr. Madeline, thank you, Brother O'Connor. Dr. Madeline Clark, I see your hand up.
Hi, greetings. God bless you, Reverend Oliver. Reverend Burks, this communication, this is something that is so profound and so much needed. especially in our community. This is your meeting on Mondays need to be broadcast on ABC, CBS, or some local network that men can actually hear this and be a part of it. I know that my father made such a big difference in my brother's lives, and through our upbringing, it was the strong male presence that was there. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate that you're sharing it with us on today. But I have a question, and it may end up being just a comment. I might have got the answer through that last conversation that you had. But I watched a movie over the weekend. It was called The Green Book. And this gentleman, Don Shirley, was a pianist, a classical pianist from the 50s and 60s. And he played at these like Carnegie Hall. He played down in the Deep South. However, when he wasn't playing, he was treated with such negligence. He was basically mishandled when he wasn't at that piano. And one of the things he said, if I'm not Black enough, and I'm not white enough, and I'm not man enough, then what am I?
Right.
So it really touched me when you said, it might be a person without a home, or it might be a man that has a big home. But when it comes to self-worth, how do you really implore and instill that, let's say in a young child? How do you really validate them as now I have two sons, and I'm truly blessed because they are men, but they're men because of our foundational background and our family dynamic and our DNA. So there was some other they had some different choices that was afforded to them. So as a young child, and I'll go through that, I'll start with the critical age from 9 to 16. How do you really show them the work? Because I think that's the most valuable thing you could give a person, is to validate them, show them their work. Like even with my grandsons growing up, I called them kings. I called them prince, and then I called them kings. And our culture was to cultivate that value. But how, from a male perspective, how would you say to instill that in a young boy?
So let's do this. So everything starts with definition, correct? So we have to define value.
Okay.
What is value? Now, based on where I am at in culture, value could be the quality, the quantity that I have in my life. Not the quality of life, but the quantity of things that I possess in my life. For some people, that's value. So for the person who doesn't have that stuff, and that's all they're introduced to is the things that we accumulate in life, they find themselves not of much value, because they define value by the accumulation of stuff, tangible stuff, houses, cars, clothes, recognition, all those things that we define as value. So I think it starts with definition. So then our responsibility as fathers and as mothers is to let our children know value is not in what you possess, but who possesses you. How do you see yourself without these things? Because if I don't see myself without these things as valuable, then I have to see myself with these things as valuable. So it's about the person. So what I do is I tell young men, even without this stuff, you're valuable. And as much as you value yourself, you can obtain these things. Because a man who knows his value will work, he will steward well, he will give to those who lack, because he understands his value system isn't an external thing, it's an internal thing. So I define my value, I teach young men to define their value as an intrinsic part of who they are, not in the accumulation of stuff that they accumulate because of work or because of somebody giving them something. Because I see kids that have nothing who know who they are and they value themselves. Then I see kids with a lot of stuff and don't even know who they are. They don't even, they're wondering, who am I? What am I supposed to do? So again, I think it starts with definition. And I use this example all the time for fathers. So and I use a lot of scripture, biblical references. So when Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist, the Bible says that when he came up out of the water, God said this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. I think we as men have to give our sons public affirmation and validation rather than private. Because whenever a son hears a father validate him publicly, he has a different value of himself.
Yes.
Versus privately. So yes, private validation is important, but public validation is as important, if not more so, because now he sees how his father sees him, even in the public forum, in the public marketplace. So when I can validate my son in the public as much as I validate him in private, he will measure up to that validation. He will own that. He will walk that thing out because he knows his daddy values him so much so that his daddy speaks validation in the public square. Now the public square also sees him as value based on what his daddy declared.
Yes.
So I'm always validating my son publicly more so than privately.
Awesome.
That's
Awesome. Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Me too. That was beautifully said and absolutely correct. Anyone else like to chime in and share?
I can't turn on my camera because I'm doing tech, but thank you, Pastor Burke. You were talking about answering their question. So in your conversation, do you have like particular phrases or particular sentences or particular questions that can get us to the point where they will ask the question? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked me that. So I have two children by my first wife, a son and a daughter. They're 10 years apart. So my daughter's 36, my daughter's 35. Carson will be 25. So it was interesting. Because of Man Up, we challenge each other with different places in our lives that we need to, let me see what word I want to use. We would need to mature in, right? So I have a really good relationship with my children, with their mom, and they love my current wife. And so we have a really good relationship. But the funny thing is that I'd never taken both of my kids to dinner together. I've been to dinner with Carson and I went to dinner with Brittany, but never the three of us together. So about a month ago, I called them and I said, hey, well, we've never gone to dinner, the three of us. Let's make arrangements and go to dinner. So they came to the house. We drove to dinner. The three of us did without my current wife, without their mom. And so I asked them this question. And they were afraid because I called them together. We were going to dinner and they thought I was sick or I was moving. They didn't know what was going on. But I asked them a question. I said, let me ask you a question. If somebody asked you, who is your dad? What would you say? And of course they said, well, he owns his own company. He's a pastor. And I stopped them. I said, I didn't ask you if they asked you what your dad did. I asked you, what if they asked you who your dad was? And it stopped them. So they began to express how they saw me. And it was different based on the time I was in their lives, but I was always in their life. And so we went through this whole thing. So I think one of the things we have to do is ask our children, ask the young, how am I showing up? How do you see me? And then set in that as they tell you, without justification, without explanation, just set in that. Because what it does, it gives them permission to be honest with you about how they view you. And hopefully you can hear them and then make the necessary adjustments in your life so they can see you differently based on how you want to be seen. It's a hard thing to hear because most of us think we've done a good job. Most of us think well of ourselves because we provided the necessary things that they need: food, shelter, and clothing. But I think more so than that, they need to see us and not the provisions that we make for them, meaning food, shelter, and clothing. So how do you show up? Ask them, how do I show up? And without justification, without explanation on your part, let them be honest enough to tell you the truth. And you have to give them the space to do that. And I think when we hear that, it gives us a different revelation of who we really are when we show up in their life.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think more so than our children, just the people that we have in our lives. How am I showing up? How do you see me? And really, again, we don't justify and we don't try to explain it away. We just own it because this is their perspective of us. And we want to know, how do you see me? And, as a leader, it's hard to hear sometimes when you think you've led well, but they don't see you like that.
Absolutely. God bless you. Anyone else like to share?
Can I share this, Oliver?
Reverend Franklin, when he go ahead. Please.
No, let him go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh.
And you can say, and then he can come on.
So I grew up in an area called Gainesville, Virginia, which is about 30 miles south of Washington, D.C. 10 years ago, the church was set on fire by an arsonist, a young white kid who was working for the fire department. And he set the church on fire. The church burnt up 10 years ago. Now, the church is on the national and the state historical register. So it was established in, I want to say 1853 or somewhere around there. Now, this church was on a place called the Settlement. The Settlement, where I grew up at, was 460 acres, comprised of only Black families that they had acquired after slavery. So it's 460 acres, called the Settlement. And this church was the central hub for information, for gathering. It was a central place for us. Like I said, 10 years ago, a young man set it on fire. Well, it's been crazy because the church was underinsured. They couldn't rebuild. And they were locked on both sides because, as we know, people begin to sell off property and companies come in and build houses around the area. So when George Floyd passed away, when he was killed, when George Floyd was killed, let's be honest about it. When he was killed, we know everything popped off with the protest. Well, there's a white pastor in our area that I'm associated with now. I've been trying to get him to come to my conference. I'm going somewhere with this. And this thing allowed me the opportunity to introduce myself to him. And we had a conversation. He asked to meet me for lunch. So we met for lunch, and out of that was birthed this forum where a bunch of these pastors get together every second Saturday of the month. And we begin to develop relationships, white pastors, Italian pastors, Hispanic pastors, Korean pastors, and Black pastors. We made a concerted effort to make sure that we had solidified relationship before the next event occurred. Because we didn't want to come to the fire and put it out after the fire's already, started. We wanted to be prepared in case the fire started. So the friend of mine who was driving from a location, and he called me and said, "Stevie, you know anything about this church called Mount Pleasant?" I said, "Absolutely." So he and I met for lunch with the pastor of the church. Now, they had begun to rebuild. Pastor Scott met with him. His church had sold some property to Amazon. The pastor who reached out to me, this white pastor, this is a Black church. He sold some property to Amazon, a significant amount of money. And through relationship, through time, this church needed $500,000 to finish the building. His church gave this black church a check for $300,000. Another church, white church, gave this black church $50,000. Another church, a white church, gave them $30,000. So we met this past Saturday. We toured the church in its reconstruction. We all met, talked, had a conversation. I'm saying all of to say this: not every white person is bad. I think there is a group of people who have recognized the atrocity that has been perpetrated on a certain segment of the American society. And they're trying to reconcile this in a way that is visible. And it's not to appease or not to bring, not to feel good about themselves. It is about a reconciliation to make things right, to reconcile the thing that is wrong. And so being a part of that has been really enlightening to me, to help me navigate this system, navigate this culture that we find ourselves in. Division is all over the place. And so we need the help of every single person to make all of this right. We as Black people can't make it right without the help of them, and they can't make it right without us. So we need each other to come to the table of understanding, listening, and reasoning to make this thing work. And for us, it started with this conversation that started after George Floyd was killed, and building relationship to the degree now where they've given about $400,000 to a Black church. The funny thing is, not a Black church has contributed to their funding. This is an historical Black church. Not a Black church has given a penny.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation and a whole nother
Right.
dynamics.
Right.
But we want to thank God is in the, that's a whole nother dynamics, that I work on the other end. How do we bridge between it? I call the two brothers Black and white, because their relationship is imperative for the positive trajectory and change of America. And God does not make a mistake when he brought all his children together.
Right.
It was for a greater purpose than what we could see. And you're just sharing how that purpose is manifesting itself in a positive way. I want to thank you for that, sharing with that. It's very profound. Reverend Franklin, God bless you.
Hey, thank you so much. Reverend Oliver, I really want to thank you so much for hosting this. And also Pastor Burke, thank you so much for your guidance, your inspiration, and all the things in which you share with us. So many things in which I can say, and I really like when you emphasize the importance of listening. That is so true, because so often, I believe it's a habit of so many of us to just anticipate what we're going to say next, instead of being present towards the heart of the person who is expressing their needs or concerns or their issues. And by you saying that, I think that is so excellent. I have one question, and I do have a comment to say, and that is that, I'm reminded of a really nice experience that I was fortunate to have with one young man, one young Black father. And he was sharing with me, when he was holding his daughter in his arms. She was only about 2 years old. And he shared with me, man, it's hard trying to, get a job, man, and taking care of her. I just wish I could do a lot more for her. And, and after he just got finished saying what he had to say, I just said, oh my God, you have no idea, Frank, what you're doing. You are giving her everything. You are giving her you. That is the most precious thing that you can give to your daughter.
Right.
you know, and I meant that, and I said that passionately. And, you know, he received that, and he nodded his head, and he shook his head, and he acknowledged it. And, you know, and this is what I feel as though you are doing, and that all of us need to do. Just take that time just to listen. And if you have any type of webinars or seminars, I'll be more than glad to hear any seminar that you are on, because that is powerful what you said. And also to Dr. Alexander's point, your stuff should be on television. I mean, it should be on some type of program. You should have something on ABC or one of the networks or something, because that is so important. That component, that's a missing element. And you know, and again, I just want to thank you. Everything that you said is really inspired by God, and thank you so much for sharing. And I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You know,
I would like to say, go ahead.
I love Oliver. Oliver has been that vehicle that God has used to allow me to share some things. So I appreciate Oliver giving me opportunity just to share what really what the heart of men are saying. Any child, and you've heard this before, I'm sure each one of us have heard a child say, all I ever wanted was you. All I ever wanted was you. And I think we have to take that to heart, that all they ever wanted was us. I think they would exchange anything for us. And we have the propensity, we have the tendency to think that they want these things, but really what they want is us. And we give them these things because we don't know how to give them us. We don't know how to give them us. So we give them this other stuff as a distraction from us having to show up. Even broken, our kids could better accept brokenness if they saw us be broken and heal in the process of our brokenness. But because we keep that stuff from them, they think this other stuff gives them value. And it's never been true. It's never been true. When you look back over your life as an older person, what are the things you remember the most? It's the things that the time you spent with your family, with your dad, with your mom, outside playing with your friends. It's the time you spent with people, not with stuff. And not with stuff.
So true.
And
that is so true.
Yeah, and if it was true for us, it's got to be true for our kids, because all they are little us's. They're just little people who have the same longing to be seen and loved and heard and embraced and just played with. That's what they want. And for some reason, we seem to think, especially our generation, we threw the baby out with the bathwater. We said this to ourselves, and I subconsciously said this about myself. I'm not going to let my kids grow up like I did, as though it was bad. Now, there were some rough moments, but it wasn't bad. And so we threw the baby out with the bathwater. We gave them stuff. We gave them opportunity, which they needed, but we gave them things, but never gave them us. And now, all they wanted was us.
Right. Thank you so much. I wanted to say that in all that these beautiful words that were shared, and I've always appreciate your deep insights and your deep heart for what of healing and the components of what needs to be healed and how to heal. I think what is missing within our judicial system, our criminal system, is making that a very central component, if you will, of dealing with these guys instead of, like you said, let's rehabilitate them. Let's put them through some job training. So as you said with the man, the 9 that left and the one that left, the other 9, I think you said they were healed, but the other one was left whole. So the other one's 9 got the jobs, but the other one, not only did he get the job, but he received some internal enlightenment, you
Mhm.
know, and healing in his heart. So I think that our system has not embraced that as a primary target. I think because of how the system sees our criminals. Many of our criminals are crying out for what I just say, all that you said, they're crying out for love. And if we are like God, as you said, we are the image of God. God is, and everyone says it, God is the embodiment of love. So no one is exempt from the process of receiving love. I don't care if it's male, female, whatever. All of us have that in us. I want to thank you for that. I would like to ask Dr. Jenkins has arrived, and would love to have him join us in some comments and some words. Dr. Jenkins, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you, Dr. Oliver, and thank you, Pastor Burke. We've enjoyed your presentations on several occasions, and I can't thank Reverend Oliver enough for what's happening with stopping the violence. So I'm very, very encouraged. And here Reverend Oliver is in Africa, running this program so successfully. It's really outstanding. And every week we are learning so many different things about how we can change the hearts of people with the blessing of God. And there's people, God has people on every level, just like you were talking, Dr. Burke. We know God has prepared the way. And I think stopping the violence is really touching all the different efforts that are so important. So Reverend Oliver, we miss you in America, but we know your work is critically important. So come home soon, but stay also as long as God tells you to. We're so happy to be here with you, and God bless everybody on the program and watching in. And then this goes on to YouTube, and it just goes viral after a while. Thank you so much. God bless.
Bless you. Thank you so much, Reverend Jenkins. Thank you again. Any last words anyone like to say as we're closing, Pastor Burke?
Yeah. Oliver, you and I spend a lot of time talking, and one of the things that I think we have to do a better job with is being intentional about working in concert with each other rather than working in competition with one another. I think when we learn how to work in concert with the different things that we're doing, we can better equip these men to be made whole. One of the problems I notice is that we seem to be, not you and I'm just speaking in general, that we seem to be in competition with each other, not understanding that if we were to work in concert, we could do a better job of reaching a larger mass of people at the same time. So I'm intentional with working in concert with anybody who's doing anything. I will partner with you. I will help you help me. At the end of the day, I think if we do it together, we can do a better job of reconciling some of this. I don't think any one of us can do all of this by ourselves. I think it takes each one of us to make just one of us. So I'm here to help and assist in any way I can. Oliver, I'm always available for you because I love your heart. I think that's what matters the most, is the heart. So I'm always available to you, man, even when you're not even on the same continent I'm on. I'm always here for you. So thank you again for this opportunity. I appreciate it. I love you.
Oh, thank you. I love you too very much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. As we're in the closing, closing remarks, let me just ask some quiet person like David Reed. David, we just need just a couple of words. Did I catch it?
What a wonderful program. I'm so impressed with Pastor Burke, and I've been on his program on Monday nights, and I'm really just amazed at the depth of your experience. I'm learning something new about you every time I hear you speak, and I actually contacted him at the last minute, and you know, he must really love you, Reverend Oliver, because he said, I will do it. No questions asked. And I just appreciate what he does on those Monday nights. I can testify to the actual healing and making whole of people that I witnessed Monday night after Monday night. And, you know, when I asked him how can we multiply this to other churches, he said, we have, I believe it was 50 people on there that night. So he said, we have 50 churches on tonight. Because each father has that kind of impact on their family and their community, their neighborhood, their church, and their nation. So I would encourage us to put out a notice about that program and to welcome people and to witness the healing that is going on right here in the DMV area and now internationally as people are on the call from around the world. So thank you, Reverend Burke, and thank you, brothers and sisters, for being here, helping us multiply and work together as this forum has been doing week after week. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm.
So I want to thank you, Reverend Reed, for that. I want to thank everybody for coming. I believe next week, if it's not next week after next, but it is confirmed. And I'd like you to come back on, Pastor Burke. Next week, we have Frank D. Murphy. He was an ex-NFL ball player. You know him? Well, he has an organization called Mentoring with Purpose and dealing with recidivism and stuff like that. And so I spoke with him. He is confirmed to come on. I would love to have you both on at the same time, maybe a little dialogue going on as well. Yeah, so he might be on next week or week after next, but he has confirmed with me.
Okay.
So we look forward to them. Brothers and sisters, everyone who spoke, Reverend Franklin, Reverend Reed, thank you. Always, Dr. Madeline Alexander, thank you always so much for your always input is so important. Reverend Jenkins, we want to thank you for your heart and your trust and everything else is very beautiful. Really love it. Love you. Brothers and sisters, God bless you. We will absolutely see you next week. Reverend Dr. Pastor, my good friend, Stevie Burke. We always have deep conversations. So I really love you too. And thank you for your deep words. You have a great deep mind and deep insight that you express so eloquently and lovingly. Okay, thank you so much. And those boys, you have been speaking life into those boys, those men.
Amen.
That's why you're so successful. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.
God bless, Pastor Bird.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You be safe, Oliver. Get on.
Oliver.
Thanks. Okay, thank you. We'll talk.
Be
Be
safe.
safe,
God bless.
Reverend Oliver. God bless. Peace and blessings to everyone. Have an amazing week.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you, Dr. Alexander. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Franklin.
God bless.
Thank you, Reverend Oliver. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Jenkins, good to see you.
Blessing, peace and blessing.
Oh, thanks. Hey, Chris.
God bless you all.
Thank you.
Hey, hi.
Have a blessed week, brothers and sisters.
God
Yeah,
bless
thank you, Reverend
All
Reed.
right, Reverend Reed.
You're quite well.
Man.